They say a mother's heart is an infinite ocean of love. It's a beautiful metaphor, poetic, but terribly inaccurate. Maternal love is not an ocean, it is ice, hard, ancient, impossibly heavy. It floats for others, but if you shatter it, it cuts you to the bone. This is what Chloe learned, this is what I was forced to teach her. I remember the exact moment silence descended upon the house. An unusual silence. I had returned from my brief retreat in the Hamptons, that little sanctuary I organise every quarter to escape the permanent hum of Manhattan. My driver had dropped me off on East 74th Street. The newly restored wrought-iron gate had groaned faintly. It was 4:30 p.m. The October light, thin and golden, filtered through the maples, drawing pale diamonds on the Italian marble in the foyer. Everything was in order, too much in order. Normally, at this hour, the foyer pulsed with a joyous anticipation. I would hear the faint clicking of Winston's paws on the oak floors, followed by his small, gasping breath as he rushed toward me, his entire body twisted in ridiculous joy to offer his greeting. Winston was a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, but he was not a dog. He was a small, mahogany-furred aristocrat, my 20-pound companion of elegant silence and absolute fidelity. There was no clicking, no panting, no Winston. I left my luggage by the entrance. The silence began to gain weight, thickening into something palpable. I walked up the grand staircase. I proceeded to the study. It was the room where, according to my late husband Arthur, time stood still. It was there, behind Arthur's oil portrait, that I kept the small, wall-mounted safe. The room itself was merely a library. The books smelled of old paper and ancient leather. I did not detect the scent of a break-in, no cold draught from a broken window, no stirred dust. Just Chloe's scent, a mixture of her cheap cherry vape and the overly sweet perfume she persisted in wearing, despite my remarks on discretion. The scent of negligence. The portrait, a severe image of Arthur, was slightly askew, a fraction of a millimetre. But I had hung it myself after his death in 2018. It had been perfectly aligned with a level line. That small deviation was a scream. I moved the portrait. I keyed in the code. I pressed the handle. The latch withdrew with that familiar, satisfying click that Arthur had chosen because it was so discreet. I pulled open the steel door. The space was empty. There wasn't even dust, because I'd left the mahogany jewellery box inside. The box was gone. That was the box containing my engagement ring, a 5-carat Asher-cut diamond, the Ceylon sapphires Arthur had given me for our 20th anniversary, and most importantly, the object around which our family legend had revolved for 3 generations, the Madison Line emerald brooch. Arthur had bought it in Geneva. It was ridiculously ostentatious in size and purity, a frozen piece of jungle set with tiny pear-cut diamonds. It was, quite literally, my safety net, my insurance. I did not scream. Chloe's emotions are always loud. Mine are synchronized with the movement of quicksand. I took my phone and sent a single text message. "Where is Winston?" I waited, sitting in Arthur's leather armchair. The chair was warm, steeped in the scent of pipe tobacco and old books, a temporary balm. The light faded, leaving the room in elegant shadow. 2 minutes? 5 minutes? "I have an emergency. Call me back." "Yes, Chloe." She was in that new neighbourhood she called Vibrant, Bushwick. A grim loft, bathed in the neon light of abandoned warehouses, which she shared with her latest, a boy named Liam, an installation artist, as he introduced himself, which is to say, a parasite. I called her directly. She answered, her voice surprisingly calm. Too calm. "Mum, I'm in the middle of a—" "Where is the emerald brooch, Chloe?" My voice was a whisper, the kind of sound she knew signalled danger, the sound of a knife sliding across silk. There was a long silence. I heard the distant sound of electronic music, a heavy bass, then the scratch of a match. She was smoking. I had to. A single word dropped like a pebble down a well. "I had to, Mum. Liam absolutely needed to pay his studio rent, and he was going to be evicted. You know how important his work is for the Chelsea Gallery show. I closed my eyes. It wasn't about the studio. It was about the loft, about Liam. She owed him a bottomless debt, not of money, but of identity. She defined herself by the drama of her life beside him. You sold the Madison Line emerald brooch, I repeated, and your father's sapphires, and your engagement ring, which I gave you for your 20th birthday. It's just a down payment, Mum. I used one of Liam's contacts, a discreet pawnbroker on Canal Street. He's holding it as collateral as soon as I get my next cheque from my... She stopped, realising the cheque came from my trust fund. And Winston? My voice was different now. It had slipped beneath the frieze. It was porcelain that had just cracked. Another silence, longer burdened with delayed panic. Mum, a purebred dog with a pedigree is easier to move. He found a lovely family in Connecticut. She's passionate about dog shows. It's better for him. He needs space to run. That is when the calmness washed over me. The true calm. The calm before the storm. No, the calm that is the storm. A wave of terrible clarity. Arthur often told me that my worst quality was my ability to transform pain into a 5-phase battle plan. Chloe hadn't just stolen my financial security and my memories. She had taken the last living, pure thing Arthur had left me. Winston slept beneath my arm every night. He was the echo of my unconditional love for Arthur, the only unconditional love I had known since. I disconnected the call. I spent 30 minutes walking through the house, from the shikisyi, basement to the roof terrace. I touched the oak furniture, the silk curtains, the thick carpeting. I looked at the photo frames. Arthur, smiling. Chloe, as a child, her eyes crystal blue, wearing the same expression of sovereign boredom she wore today. I made the second call. There would be no other. I dialed a number I hadn't used in almost 10 years. It was the kind of number that demanded an instant response, regardless of the hour or the time zone. "Sterling?" a raspy voice answered, with the dry, precise accent of the East Coast. "It's Vivian." A silence. Not a questioning silence, but a silence of recognition. Graham Sterling was a shadow in international finance, a lawyer whose firm did more clean-up work than representation. He forgot nothing. And he owed me an abyssal debt. 15 years ago, Arthur had made an error in judgment during an investment that could have sent Graham's firm into a tailspin, an ethical lapse that could have destroyed his career. I had acted. Swiftly, in silence, I had used my contacts in the press and within corporate boards to steer the narrative, buying time, space, and most importantly, radio silence. Arthur had never known how close he had been to the abyss. Graham did. "Vivian," he said. The tone was flat, unsurprised, almost expected. I had hoped never to hear this number again, but I always knew this day would come. "I have only one request. It is simple, Graham, but it must be absolute, irreversible, and above all, icy." "I'm listening." I articulated the words slowly, without a single tremor. "I need a man named Liam, a parasite living in Bushwick, to wake up tomorrow morning realising his life, financially, legally and personally, is a wall of flames. He must not only leave my daughter, but he must flee the country. And I need him to carry with him a legal complication complex enough that Chloe cannot follow him." "The nature of the betrayal?" Graham asked. His professionalism was a bulwark. My dog, a cavalier, and a family jewel that was used to pay his rent. There was another silence. I imagined Graham in his austere office on Wall Street, his gaze fixed on the skyline. "A family jewel used as collateral for rent. There is a transaction trail of undeclared funds, possible diversion. We can involve the IRS." He was already sifting through the legal flaws before I had finished. "And the dog?" "The dog is priority number 1. I want him recovered." "Good, that simplifies things." He paused. "I'm an architect, Vivian. I build things. Destruction is easier. This will cost you the price of a small revolution." "I have no concern about that, Graham. I want the man to never sleep peacefully again. And I want my daughter to understand the meaning of conditional freedom. Consider it done. I will send you an encrypted statement. Do not call me back. I will contact you when the structure is stable. Until then, act as if nothing has happened. I hung up. In 2 minutes and 30 seconds, the destiny of my daughter and her lover had been sealed, not by anger, but by surgical, legal, and financial precision. I spent the next 2 days in a state of hypercom. I ordered my Darjeeling teas. I reread The Sound and the Fury, drinking the drama of others to mask my own. Chloe called me 3 times, tearful, pleading with me not to report the pawnbroker. She no longer mentioned Liam or the emerald. She did not mention Winston. I haven't reported anything, Chloe, I said. I'm very busy looking for Arthur's papers. It was a small, cold lie, just to keep her in the dark. On the 3rd day, the drama began. I was in the kitchen by the granite countertop, watching the rain wash the bay window overlooking the garden. I was meticulously trimming the base of a cauliflower for soup. I loved the sound of vegetables yielding under the blade, the sound so clean, so definitive. My phone vibrated. It wasn't Graham, it was Chloe. The text read, "Mum, where are you? I'm coming over." 30 minutes later, she made an entrance worthy of a film scene. She stormed in, hair wet, coat soaked, her blue eyes wide with horror, not remorse, the horror of consequence. "Liam is gone." She wasn't asking. She was screaming, her voice echoing in the foyer. "He just left. His studio is closed, the loft is empty, and the worst—" She staggered against the wall. "The worst is, all his accounts are frozen, and he's wanted by the FBI. I continued cutting the cauliflower. Slice, slice. The sound was so soft, so soothing. "Arthur always told me not to associate with conceptual artists," I murmured without looking at her. "They tend to confuse talent with scamming." "No, you don't understand. It's not me. It's not the rent." Apparently, Liam used the pawnbroker contact to do a massive cryptocurrency transaction last year, a transaction outside US jurisdiction, and now there's a whole money laundering story. Funds were transferred from his account, his only untraced account, the rent account, to an address in the Cayman Islands. And it was right after he deposited the brooch money. I finally looked up. My expression, I knew, was perfectly blank. Ah, that old friend. I took a small sip of my cold tea. He's a bit overzealous sometimes. He hates tax evasion, especially when it involves funds that were technically stolen family assets. She put her hands on the counter surface, her face contorted. "You did this. You triggered a federal investigation on him just for what, Chloe? For you to pay me back? No, for the pleasure of justice? Not that either." I wiped my hands. "I acted because you sold Winston." This was the moment of intimate confession. The voice drops lower, more personal. "You know, I always forgave your debts. You wrecked 2 cars. You had 3 apartment evictions. I paid. I covered. The jewel, that was just money, insurance. But Arthur gave you your first Cavalier when you were 7. When he died, Winston was the last piece of his warmth. That is the one thing you had no right to make transactional. You proved you were worse than a thief. You are a sentimental opportunist." She burst into tears, but it wasn't the kind of tears that would have touched me before. They were tears of helplessness, not remorse. "He loved me, Mum. I needed him to see me as a saviour. I have no one left. You had a dog who loved you unconditionally and a mother who paid your bills. You were never alone, Chloe. You were only dissatisfied." The silence returned, but this time it was heavy with Chloe's defeat. She remained there, her whimpering turning into sobs. I did not touch her. An hour later, Graham called me back. His tone was even drier. "Phase 1 is complete. The man is gone. Liam flew to Mexico with what he thought was a low-profile passport, unaware that his assets in South America are being frozen by a preemptive European warrant. He thought he was escaping a small fraud. He's in the middle of an operation dismantling a massive tax evasion network that used artists as discreet mules. His downfall was structured to be fast, painful, and total. He won't look back. And my daughter? Chloe transferred funds to Liam's rent account. These funds originated from the sale of the jewel, which was an undeclared asset. Furthermore, she made several small transfers from a trust account, which triggered an alert for suspicious capital movements within the scope of the Liam investigation. I see the picture, Graham. What's the verdict? I can't put her in prison, but I can tether her. I contacted my counterpart at the Department of Justice. By using the alerts from her trust account and indirectly linking her to Liam as a person of interest in the investigative phase, we filed a preventative travel restriction on her US passport. I felt a small, cold stab of satisfaction in my chest. Vengeance was this, not fire, but frost. Details? She is legally prohibited from leaving US territory. Her passport is not cancelled, but it is flagged. Any attempt to cross the border will be signalled. She will be questioned and brought back. She will be under discreet surveillance for the next 10 years, labelled as a potential flight risk in a massive tax inquiry. There was a pause. She's not in jail, Vivian, but she can't join Liam. She is chained to her mistake here. She is free to walk around this house, but she is not free to leave. Perfect, I breathed. Oh, and the dog. What? The pawnbroker contact is also the one who sold Winston in Connecticut. We made an acquisition. Fully legally. He will arrive home tomorrow at noon. He is fine. The next day, the sun shone over the Upper East Side. One of those clear, cold days. Chloe was locked in her room, probably crying over the futility of her phone. I was in the library, writing the thank you note to Graham. The word thanks felt terribly insufficient, but money spoke louder than words. At noon, the black car pulled up. It wasn't Graham, but one of his associates, a slender woman in a navy blazer. She held a leash. Winston. He was just a brown and white spot on the pavement, but he was the focal point of my world. When he saw me, he made that high-pitched sound halfway between a yelp and a whimper. Then he ran. His joy was the only uncontaminated thing that remained. He threw himself against my legs, his small tongue licking my hand. That was the only tear I shed, a silent tear of relief. Chloe came downstairs at that moment. She saw Winston and tried to hug him, but he nestled closer to me. She realised she had been judged by the being she had betrayed first. "This is your home, Chloe," I said softly. "You can stay here, free of charge as long as you respect the law. But it's time to find a job, a life. You've lost your only exit door to the outside world. You are confined here, and Winston is with me. You made a transaction with no guarantee of return." She tried to stare me down with defiance, but her gaze broke. She saw the ice in my eyes, and she understood that the ocean was frozen forever. She didn't love me. Liam didn't love her. But Winston, he truly loved. And she had sold the only thing that was priceless. She went back upstairs without a word. The house was silent, but this time the silence was a rest. I watched Winston lie down on his familiar cushion. The jewels were gone, but what remained was invaluable. Vengeance is rarely sweet. It is necessary. It is clean. And sometimes the highest price is not money, but distance. If stories like this linger with you, stay. There is always another secret waiting to be told in the elegance of New York's brownstones. Subscribe and let's uncover them, one confession at a time.